Hi everyone, in this video I'd like to show you how to make some lens flare or lens textures in Substance Designer. So I used to buy those from various marketplaces or make them in After Effects or just hand paint them in Photoshop, but I think there's a better way to create them, at least the base image that you can manipulate later on. So the idea is the same as in the previous videos. You get a data that you can manipulate and change it on the fly, so you could get very quick iterations on your texture. Okay, so we're gonna start with some basic shape, add some stuff and blur to it. We're gonna create a background as well, additional rays, some details like this ring you can see here, and maybe we will apply some sort of mask so we can make this circular. And I just added a color gradient in Substance Designer, but we actually will be exporting this one to the engine, as I don't think we need a colored one unless it's a very specific and you want some sort of gradient in a texture. Then you might want to export it as a color map, but I tend to just expose stuff into the engine as a grayscale. Okay, and as usual I went to Unreal Engine and create like very basic particle system with this texture. Okay, so this is seriously nothing crazy, it's just a just a texture spawning. So I think this is exactly that texture with some material stuff added to it, and then I've got exactly the same texture but it's scaled horizontally, so it's basically very wide, and I just mix those together to create this. So this to me seems like some sort of impact effect, or maybe some indication if that will be different color, indication of explosion maybe. I think it's very stylized, and yeah, so let's get to it. Let's start in Substance Designer. Okay, so the first thing we need, it's probably those defining shapes. So I'm gonna start with shape node, and let's maybe try waves. Okay, so I'm gonna scale it to something like this, and maybe on the y-axis just a bit as well. Okay, so I need a one stripe, so let's try histogram scan. Okay, let's start maybe with something like this for now. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on the nodes so you can actually see the name of them. Okay, now maybe try to get splatter circular and plug it into the pattern input 1. Change the pattern to image input, and let's play with the values. Okay, so there, let's start maybe with radius, something like this. Get much larger scale. Let's play with the size random. Maybe scale random as well. Definitely make sure you change the angle random to 1, or maybe somewhere in the middle, depends what you want. And I'll change the spiral factor as well. I'm gonna leave spread at 1 for now. Okay. Alright, so I think we got those defining shapes, and now we can just tweak the pattern amount so we could get less or more. What I don't like so far is this intersection. So maybe I'm gonna change the scale a little bit. No, it's actually not the scale. It might be spiral factor. Yeah. And there's one more setting that I want to tweak. Oh, I think it's a radius actually. I think that will do for now, okay? Remember, we can always go back later and tweak those values. Right, so I'm gonna use blur now. That one, and I'm gonna use another blur. Okay, so in this one, I just wanna slight intensity, like, you know, something like 0.5. I mean, 0.5 will be okay. But for this one, I want a slightly larger value, although I need a blur. HQ. That one. Okay. So now when I blend them together, I'm gonna use add linear. I'm gonna get this subtle glow around those shapes. Okay, so I think this is for the shapes, but maybe let's go back to the splatter circular and tweak it a little bit, because I really don't like this bit. Okay, maybe radius random to 1 changes. And this stuff too actually looks pretty cool. I'm gonna change the size as well. And I'm gonna try different pattern amounts just to see how it looks with the various rotations and basically amount of those shapes that were created in the beginning. Right, okay, so I kind of like the shapes that shape that we got here, so let's try and maybe create some nice background for it. Okay, so I'm gonna use empty. Okay, I'm gonna use this node. I'm gonna rotate it, and I'm looking for this sort of pattern. Let's try this, okay? And I think this we will use this with the warp node. Warp, but we're gonna actually plug in a few lines into the warp node, okay? Because yeah, we just wanna, you know what, let me just do it. It will be a lot easier to explain, okay? So I've got a simple line, and all I wanna do, I just wanna create like a blur that goes from the top just a little bit, not to the whole image, because then I'm gonna warp this image and create like it's gonna wrap around itself. I'm gonna show you, okay? So let's get transform. Let's just move it to the top. And let's turn off tiling on this node. So we only got this on top. I'm gonna use blur. Again, 2 blurs. Because I need this to blur actually a lot. We got this weird thing here. Let's see if disabling tiling will help. No, okay, so maybe let's use the other blur, that one. Okay, I'm gonna blend those together. And what we should get is something like this. Maybe I will try max blending mode instead. I'm gonna use this for warp. Oh, let me try to get another warp node. Oops, sorry, the other way around. Okay, so we get something like this maybe. Now let's use a direction or a blur and put 90 degrees there. So we get something like this, and now maybe let's use shape mapper. So as you can see, we are getting somewhere, I think. But I need level nodes as well, because I don't want this to be uniform. What I want breaks here maybe and here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do that with levels. I think I'm gonna blur it a lot more. Something like this maybe. And for the warp, I'm actually gonna use only this. Okay, so I think this could work. And now maybe let's try to blend it with this, but we need to turn that into shape mapper as well. So we get nice circle. Now let's make circle a lot smaller. So we get like a very hot center. I think I need this to spread a lot more into that texture, so I would use this. Actually, I'm gonna get rid of that level node. I don't think we need it. Okay, so I think that's pretty cool. I'm gonna use blur here as well, because I think we just need a little blur, not that much. Okay, and now maybe let's try to bring our main shapes and let's try to blend it together. Okay, so I've got a few issues with this texture, right? I think we just need a little bit more data in this black area. So I'm gonna go to the shape mapper and I'll increase the width of that texture. Also, I think those lines are a little bit too intense, so I just need less of them, or just being less intense. Okay, so we just want this to be subtle, I think. Right, let's try to expand this a little bit using slope, blur, and grayscale. So what it's gonna do, I'm trying to create like a radial or maybe a zoom blur. So I'm trying to expand it further into the image. And I'm gonna use shape node. Try something like this. So I want a lot of samples and intensity as well. Maybe something like, I'm gonna go with 30, 35 even. So as you can see, we got those really nice rays coming from the middle. Okay, if you think that the lens lines are a bit, you know, maybe they go a little bit too much into the texture, then you can always go into your splatter circular node and just change the size on one of the axes. Okay, I'm gonna keep it as it is for now. And I just wanna add additional few more details to it. So I'm gonna blend it with lines. So I'm gonna create shape. I'm gonna go for waves again. And rotate it 90 degrees. Scale it only on one axis to maybe something like this, and blend into it. I'm gonna blur it a little bit as well, so we could get very subtle line. Something maybe like this. Or maybe like 3 lines, it depends what you want really. So I kind of want like one blurred line, so I'm gonna keep it as it is. And maybe another thing I would like to add, it would be like a different version of it. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna warp it, and I'm gonna warp it with Perlin noise. And that's going to allow me to create some sort of swirly texture. Okay, I'm going to blend it with another shape. Actually, I need to reverse the order because this shape will serve as a mask. Add a little bit blur to it. Increase the quality of the blur. And now if I blend those together, we'll be getting additional details. So this is part 1, and in the second part we will explore a little bit more details about this texture. We're gonna explore adding a bit more rays, a little bit background to it, and basically I think this texture is already looking good. It gives you a lot of details, and you can manipulate all the stuff in here. So for example, if you don't want this swirly texture, you just change the opacity and it goes away. Same with the number of lines. You can go back to our splatter circular shape that we created at the beginning, and you can see you can just change the amount of those lines as well, and that'll be for the rays here. Okay, maybe you don't want, maybe you just want to, you know, few rays. As you can see, we already got a decent looking lens texture, at least I think. Right, so that's it for this part, and another part will just, you know, add more details and background data to that image. All right, thanks for watching.